Welcome to the Expert Series from Selling Your Canadian Business. Our book lays out the expert team of advisors every Canadian business owner needs in their corner. This series brings those experts into the conversation, one at a time. Disclaimer: this series is for educational purposes only and is not professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals. Find our book and more resources at sellingyourcanadianbusiness.ca. Here is your host.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Prowse from the Shaughnessy Group, and this is another episode of the Expert Interview Series. This is our opportunity to interview professionals working to help business owners grow and eventually exit their business. Today's guest is Roy De Medeiros. Roy is the founder and the president of the Fulcrum Management Group, where he helps business owners build scalable companies and create long-term value and owner freedom. With more than 30 years of executive leadership experience, Roy has led sales transformations, built high-performing teams, and driven growth across North America for organizations ranging from entrepreneurial businesses to global companies. Today, he serves as a trusted fractional executive and strategic advisor and working to implement the leadership systems and accountability needed to scale with confidence and help owners achieve what he calls freedom engineered. Roy, thanks very much for joining us today.
David, thank you for having me today.
Great. Looking forward to it. So Roy, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got to doing what you're doing today.
Sure, it's an interesting journey. So I'm a husband. So I've been married for 30 plus years. I'm a father of two and a grandfather now of two as well. I'm also the founder of Fulcrum Management Group. Worked in corporate for about 25 years, and in those 25 years is where I kind of learned a lot of the skill sets, and actually all my fractional partners as well, learn the skill sets that we have today that we can actually work with small to medium-sized businesses. The biggest learnings came in around 2014 through to 2018, where I actually worked with a company out of Sweden, and we pretty much did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We merged organizations. We had a whole series of issues that were going on, very similar to what the founder-led businesses have today. So lack of structure, no cadence, financials, no visibility to margins, whatnot. And it was my opportunity to kind of dive into that and to learn about that. So it was like drinking from a fire hose, but it gave me the skill sets and the know-how to understand how exactly a business runs and how to put it all together. And at that time, I didn't have EOS, I had Six Sigma. So we put all the structures in place and then built the business out. And then I had the opportunity to do that multiple times after that. And then my last stint was actually with Cantel, based on a series of shareholders that bought a series of companies, but they put it together into one company, and we got to build a structure. And then we had two avenues for that business: was either to sell the business or to continue to grow the business. And we got lucky just before COVID. We got acquired in 2021, which then had to make a choice, right? Do I go back into corporate, or do I take the skill sets that I've learned over the last 15, 20 years and apply it to the small, medium-sized businesses? And I was already getting a lot of conversations with small owners that were asking me questions with regards to what I did, how I did it, and whatnot. And I thought, there's something here.
Yeah, excellent. So, Roy, we're both members of the Exit Planning Institute, and they talk about the three legs of the stool, which is, business readiness, personal readiness, and financial readiness. Why do you think that is an important framework for helping a business owner prepare for an eventual exit?
I think all three are important, right? So it's like a stool. If one leg or two legs are not there, the stool falls over, right? So business readiness for a founder is, can the company run and grow without you, right?
Right.
And that's exactly what a buyer pays for. The financial readiness is, what is that number you're looking for when you retire, to make sure that your life after exit is there. But also, are you prepared for your capital gains or taxation? All that is taken into play. And do you know what your value gap is, right? So you know what your business is valued today, but is it enough for that exit for you? And the other one is the personal readiness. And this is probably the one that everyone kind of skips when they're looking at with regards to exiting is, what are you going to be doing when you exit from your business? Do you have hobbies? Are you going to be in a philanthropy? Are you going to be an angel investor? Are you going to start another business? Or are you going to do something completely different? And you start working on that way before you sell your business, right? one of the number one things that a lot of owners regret is usually selling. They feel they didn't have the price that they thought they were going to get, and then at the end they also lose the identity or the purpose of who they are and what they're not. So they're not prepared for that last component. So all three are really important, and I'd say that probably the personal readiness is one of the more important ones that gets missed as well.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100% because I can tell you from an M&A perspective, a lot of deals that blow up, I think it's because something between the ears of the owner wasn't addressed ahead of time, and there's a lot of qualitative factors that go into a potential exit. And I think a lot of times when that's not properly addressed, you either see owners, you hear stories about them like, ghosting out and, almost kind of self-sabotaging the deal, or maybe they do go through with it, but there's a lot of regret afterward.
Yeah, and then from my experience too, and working with acquisitions on the corporate side, we also see founders, they start sabotaging the post sale as well. They start doing a lot of things that causes issues with regards to the buying party, right? And that it's not uncommon that we actually walked a few out and took over ownership of the business because of that as well.
So if a business owner is about 5 years away from exit, maybe what kind of things should they be doing right now to maximize both their valuations and maybe their exit options?
I'd say 5 years is good. If they can go out further, even great. So if you can go out 10 years or 15 years, it helps with regards to building value in your business. But I guess the key thing, if you're 5 years out, get a baseline for your business, right? Know what your gap is, what your value gap is,
Yeah.
and then start putting the structure in place for your business, right? Put in the quarterly rhythms, start putting in a lot of the structure that you need with regards to what a buyer is going to be looking for, right? So your step one is basically get a real evaluation of what your business and what it's worth today. We provide a readiness assessment if that's the case,
Yeah.
and then know your gap, right? What the distance is between where you want, what that trigger event is for you, and where you are today. So that way you know what to build on the enterprise value. And then start putting together cadence on a quarter by quarter basis with regards to clean financials, reduce your founder dependence, and create a second layer of leadership, and then fix all the stuff with regards to what's going on in your business, concentration of customers, documentations and processes. There's a whole series of things. If you can do that and have the business kind of run on its own without you being involved, the payoff is significant. So right now, the value isn't just the growth of the business, but it's also what you put into the business, how you build the business as well, and how you scale it.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point too, is that, you don't have to, you could be like 10 or 15 years away, but uh, thinking about an eventual exit is, we learn from the Exit Planning Institute, that's just good business strategy. So what are your thoughts on that?
It is. It creates, if you can start sooner than 5 years, or sorry, giving yourself more time than 5 years,
Yeah.
it gives you more options at the end, right? The exit can be two different. There's two different options, or multiple options. You can exit and sell your business, and you can get a certain percentage of that sale after taxation and everything else.
Yeah.
Or you can turn your business into a legacy or a generational wealth vehicle where the business can still be running, it still supports your lifestyle that you're looking for, but someone else is running it for you, right? So there's an option because then you've grown it to a certain size that it can actually take care of you and your family, even though it's still operating under your, say, as a shareholder umbrella, as an example.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you think that owners make if let's say they're 3 to 5 years away from a prospective exit? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see them making, or maybe it relates to things that they're not doing that they should be doing?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is they treat the exit as basically an event instead of a process. So it's something that's going to happen in the future. I'll take care of it when it comes along, not realizing that there's a lot of things that need to happen before that occurs, right? And the more bandwidth or the more runway you have, the better the outcome's going to be for you. The other thing too is a lot of business owners, they start hearing on peers, I sold my business for 8 times. There's a story, but it doesn't mean that your business is going to sell the same way, right? It's always good to get an evaluation and get an expectation of what it is. The unfortunate thing that 80% of the businesses that go out to sell don't sell, right? And that's for certain reasons, right? The other thing is you may not have you have messy financials, which then creates a buyer trust. Everything routes through the owner. Concentration risk with one big customer, one key employee. You got no personal or financial plan. You have with regards to for retirement. You haven't looked at all the assets you have. You haven't put that in place. And then you also have run into the danger, right? So we got the five Ds, right? But you get forced exits, so health, burnouts, things that can kind of occur, and if you're not prepared for that, they can kind of blindside you, right? So if you can prepare, like I said, if you can prepare further ahead, and you never know when an occurrence will occur, and luckily it won't happen, but you are prepared and you know where you stand at any point in time, right? And you're building that value in your business, so that a trigger event could actually come sooner, or you can continue to build that generational wealth. That's the direction you want to go into.
Yeah. Well, I know being a financial person, I mean, obviously I'm very sensitive to clients having bad financials, and that's the one area where I know, in terms you talked about trust, where trust can be broken, where they're looking and they don't really know what it is that they're trying to buy. One of the other big red flags I always see is customer concentration, and this is something again that it is addressable, but like you said, we need you need the right amount of time to actually be able to fix that problem and present your company in a better light.
It's true, and then the more time, and then the true test is whether or not if you can leave your business for a period of time. And what we do is we do a test with a lot of our clients. We send them away on a vacation for 2 weeks, so that we just let them take a cell phone, no laptops, whatnot, and then trust that the leadership team we put in place and the structure we put in place is going to run the business for them. Because there's also another criteria in there too. It's the business self-running in itself, but you also got the owner's mindset that you have to kind of work with as well, right? The ability of them letting go, and also I guess disassociating themselves as their purpose and their entity is the business, right? And that takes a little bit of time as well to create, and through coaching and everything else. That we have some coaches that help business owners do that.
Yeah. Now, I know you've talked a lot about scaling faster. What does that mean to you, and what are some of the key elements of that process?
Yeah, scaling faster is basically putting in a business structure, right? Putting a structure in place, which is the foundation of the business, and then building the structure on top of that: operations, finance, sales, marketing, all the different components that say a corporation would have in place, right? What we don't do is we don't look at it as growth at any cost, right? A lot of companies can grow themselves into a crisis. And what we do is we create that, where we build that commercial engine through all the structure, right? So we try to build a structure where it sells beyond the founder. So the founder is not involved. He oversees, he can delegate and everything else, but he's got a team underneath him and he's got a system underneath him that's running his business, right? Yeah. We also look at financial visibility. We're making sure that we have the proper forecasting, proper margins, cash discipline, cash flow, EBITDA. We kind of review all that. The other thing too is on the scaling side, is having the right people in the right seats and accountability, and breaking silos, making sure all the teams are all working together and rowing in the same direction. That in itself can actually scale a company quite quickly. And the other thing too is, as you're building your business, is your operations and your systems that you're putting in place can hold twice the volume of what you're thinking of, right? So when you start thinking that and you start putting that into play, that helps a lot as you start to grow. And you never know when there's ebbs and flows in the business. You know that the business can now start handling, say, a rogue order that comes in or something like that increases the business significantly by, say, 20, 30, 40%. You're able to manage that as opposed to kind of caving in or imploding for an instance. And then the other one is cadence, right? Yeah. Whatever strategy you put in place, you actually execute it, and just don't put it on the shelf and put it away. And for us at Fulcrum, we look at structure first. We put the infrastructure in place, and once that's in place, and like I said, with the operations twice the volume, then we pour fuel on it. We basically push for the business to grow, but we know that the structure is there, that it can manage it, and we continue to grow it accordingly.
Yeah, excellent. Now, how much of exit readiness is really boils down to founder dependence, and what are some of the characteristics you see if you walk into a client that maybe it's a little bit too dependent on the owner?
I think founder dependence for your listeners and everything else is probably the biggest discount that they'll find when it comes to the sale of the business, right? Yeah. and why it matters, because they're looking for the value of the business, but
Hmm.
the buyers buy the cash flows that must survive your departure. So if you
Yeah.
can't depart and your business is dependent on you, then it's basically a couple of things will happen. Your business won't sell, or you're going to be involved in your business for a lot longer period of time than you thought, probably three
Yeah.
years, 5 years, until that kind of gets transferred over to the new owners.
Yeah.
And I guess some of the signs you're looking for as an owner that the business is dependent on you is basically, is the owner the top salesperson? Does he hold all the key relationships? That's one. The other one is every approval or bottleneck through the owner's desk. Everything has to come through the owner, right?
Hmm.
And the other sign is there's no leadership team, right? It's people underneath them, just helpers, people that are helping, but the owner still, it's like a flat line or a flat top organization. And then the other one is the numbers, the know-how live in the owner's head. It's nothing's written in, there's no processes, there's no things put in place with regards to handoffs, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the owner takes 2 weeks off, and this is why we do the 2 week
Yeah.
test. Is the business stalls, right? And once the leader leaves, everything kind of stays status quo.
Yeah.
And then I guess a lot of the times when we're talking to the business owners and we're looking at them, we ask them about the 90-day test, right?
Hmm.
If you were to leave your business today for 30 days, would your business survive? How about
Yeah.
after 60 days? And how about 90 days?
Yeah.
Would your business be here if you were gone for 90 days? And then listen to see what they would say, right? If the business continues to grow, then you have a company. If you are that linchpin or whatever with regards to the organization, then you don't really have a company. Basically, you created a job, right? And
Yeah.
then, like I said, buyers will price a business that's a job very differently from a business that has value.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the ideal is almost really where that owner can kind of take a step back and be like the chairman of the board role, where the business keeps running itself on a day-to-day basis, and they have time to either be strategic, or if they want to spend their time on personal matters, they can do that, and just maybe do like a quarterly or monthly check-in to see how things are going. I mean, obviously that's not always 100% possible, but I think from a conceptual standpoint, that's kind of what you're aiming for.
Yeah, and some of the business owners that we worked with, right? Like I said, that's why the human component takes a little bit longer. Some of the business owners we work with, it takes about 18 months for them to kind of change their mindset and to trust the system and to let go and to basically start fitting into the shoes of a CEO versus an owner that can do everything, right?
Hmm.
And then putting the time into the systems. And then we said, like I said, we send them off on vacations. But as they start to see that and they start seeing the freedom, and they have more time now to spend with family and friends and play golf and to build on the business versus in the business, right? They start seeing a lot more advantages to it, right? They're not burnt out. They're not struggling. They're enjoying the business, that they're falling in love again with the business that they created, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that alone will extend the life of the business for them, because all of a sudden they're back in love with their business and they don't see the need to retire just yet. So they can
Yeah.
now actually add more value to the business on an ongoing basis as well.
Yeah. So, I know you've helped scale businesses from, size of $2 million to much larger numbers. And there's a lot of different areas that you can focus in on, sort of like accelerating growth, tightening operations, leadership. If you go into a client, how do you sort of figure out what areas need the most attention immediately versus maybe looking at something else later on?
Usually what we'll do is we'll go in and do what we call a discovery or an assessment of the business. So we look at four key areas. We look at sales, finance, operations, and human resources. And human resources, we kind of tend to leave to the last, right? Because a lot of business owners are kind of sensitive about their employees, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of look at the three areas. We kind of look at what's going on in sales. Are sales flat, declining, or are they actually going through the roof and the team can't handle what's going on, which means there might be an operations component. And then we look at finance. Do they have proper forecasting? Can they see their financials? What their costs? They have a P&L. Can they see what's going on in their business? Do they have planned out their cash flow at 13 months or whatnot? And then usually what we'll find out is usually one of those three areas before we get to HR that's having difficulty. And then we'll usually start there. Some businesses, if they're smaller, don't have any leadership and team in place. So we'll start with the area that has the most issues going on. Some businesses are in the 10, 15 million. They already have kind of a leadership team in place. Then we start filling in the seats that are missing, and we start building the structure around that. And then basically is this we start from there, and then we scale from there too. So we sit down with the client, we put together a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, and a 1-year plan, and we start building out with regards to putting an accountability chart. We start looking at where the people are, what we need to do, where the value of the business is today, and we start building what that's going to look like over the next few years and what we need to put in place, right? And then we put KPIs as well. So, and that kind of dictates what's the next step, what needs to do, what we need to accomplish, and then all built on top of a business structure as part of that.
Yeah. Now, I know the Fulcrum Group, focuses on helping owners through different fractional leaders, in sales, finance, HR, operations, etc. Why do you think that integrated approach is so important for business owners looking to grow and maybe eventually exit their business?
It's a good question. When I coming from corporate, I always had access to my senior team, right, which is finance, HR, and whatnot. And then when I started going and working with small to medium-sized businesses, I found some of the businesses didn't have that capability or couldn't afford that capability, right? I started off being a fractional VP of sales. That's one of the roles I first started doing when I was working with businesses. And then what I found was I could go in and fix the sales problem, put all the structure in place, CRMs, cadences, processes, everything else. But if operations wasn't aligned and finance was not aligned, or the service department was not aligned, you can only go to a certain component, a certain size before everything starts to stall again. So I started pulling in fractional CFO, then I brought in a CMO, and then I found was once I started bringing in these partners and we started to scale, the scaling component actually increased significantly in a very short period of time. It eliminated silos, it created instant expertise, and we're able to build a structure a lot faster than if we just basically brought in piece by piece. And this is when we were talking earlier, we start putting that whole structure in place and that whole scenario over 3-5 years, we start looking at all the areas and building it that way. And then we take the same thing as we're putting this all into place. We're taking into consideration the 3 legs of the stool. We're working with the owner. We're putting the financial readiness in place, and we're putting in the business value. So that all kind of goes step by step or works in parallel as well.
And I think a lot of business owners probably aren't aware that fractional professionals even exist. I think there's a little bit more awareness today, but I know, 5 or 10 years ago, I don't think a lot of people, at least in Canada, knew that they existed, and I think it's a great resource for them to take advantage of, especially if you are in kind of grow and exit mode, because a lot of times the budget's tight, then maybe they can't afford a full-time CFO or full-time COO, but with fractional professionals available, it's an opportunity to tap into that expertise, obviously at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, the fractional groups are known in the U.S. They're also known in Australia and the U.K. because we've had companies from outside of Canada kind of reach out to us. And that Canada, I'd say 5 years ago when we started Fulcrum, the awareness was not there. Companies are starting to become aware that we exist, and there's a lot more of us. I guess now with all the companies kind of letting go, a lot of people are going into that fractional route. But for the founder, you're getting someone who's got 25 plus years experience from the corporate side. They've pretty much seen everything that happens with regards to a business, a large business, and they have the structure, the cadence, and the know-how to put that in place for you. And as you said, it comes at a fraction of the price, right? You can pretty much bring in a suite of individuals for probably the same price you pay for a full-time of one of them. So, yeah. Right? And you're getting that experience. And it doesn't mean that you have to have them on all the time. You can bring them in and pull them out as needed, as opposed to having them on all the time as well. But if you have a business and you're trying to create that leadership and you're trying to grow that thing, scale faster, putting them into those seats for, say, 12, 24, 36 months will significantly increase your business capacity in a very short period of time. And then with the rule with my fractionals that we work, our partners, is we'll go in for a period of time, we'll build the cadences, we'll build a structure in place, and our goal is once they get to a certain level, they need someone full time, we'll hire someone and replace ourselves. And then we move into a coaching sequence, and then we basically move into an oversight. So we get pulled in when the client is at the next level. And usually the next level is 10 million, 15, 30 million, and depending what's going on, sometimes they need extra help there, right? And sometimes they don't hire a fractional VP as a full-time employee. They'll hire a director of sales or something like that. And then we help coach that person to the next level as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great return on investment for owners. So a lot of owners think that growth alone will solve their problems, but there's obviously a difference between a business that's growing and one that's what I would call like a grow and exit business, where they're trying to focus in on transferability. So how do you kind of differentiate those two, and maybe how you would approach them?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they're looking at their business and everything else, they're looking at the EBITDA and the multiple grow, right? And then they forget the value of the business. So there's two components to the multiples, right? There's the growth component, where you're looking at growth over a series of years, and usually they're looking at 3 to 5 years of growth.
Yeah.
But then they're also looking for transferability of the business, right? It's not uncommon that in the same industry, you can have a smaller business that's probably lower in revenue, but has a good EBITDA, a strong EBITDA, and also transferability. It's quite high in the business value. Will sell for a lot higher price than, say, a counterpart that has significant growth, but doesn't have basically the structure in place that they should have with regards to the value of the side. There's probably some concentration where there's owner dependence, where the financials are not right and whatnot. So it's important to take a look at that.
So Roy, I know you're a big fan of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Talk to us a little bit about it and why you think that can be very useful for a business owner looking to grow and exit.
Yeah, it goes back to my time in corporate back in, like I said, back in 2014, when I was responsible for a multi-million dollar division with Gettinga. So I came in and so it was like a 5-year experience. So the CEO brought me in. I became the interim managing director. The business was actually failing, so they were looking at actually closing the division down and bringing everything into the U.S. And he said, "You've got a certain amount of period to turn this thing around before we kind of look at other measures," right? So one of the first things I did is what a lot of founders, and which is the pinpoint, everything came through me, right? I became the bottleneck. I became the super seller. One of the executive VPs used to call me the Superman of sales. And then with regards to the finance and everything else, it got to a certain point. 6 months in, I realized this is not acceptable. This is not working, right?
Yeah.
I got to look at something a little bit different. The great thing is, I guess it's a great thing, depending if you know GE. GE was basically a boot camp. That's where I started off a lot of my career. And we actually trained on Six Sigma. So I used a lot of the Six Sigma methodologies with regards to taking a look at what the issues were on the business that I had just taken over, what I needed to do. And very succinctly, within the first 6 months, I started putting structure in place. I started looking at my operations. I started looking at my logistics. I started looking at my finance. I started looking at my sales, and I started making changes. And then I started doing different programs. But the lucky thing is I also had a mentor, right? I was mentoring with the CEO out of the U.S. So he and I had a good conversations about what needed to be done. And then with that structure, we started seeing things expand. And then the other thing that I started looking at the right people in the right places. So I got all our resumes from all my team members and everything else. And I found some of the members that were in my team were in the wrong spots, right? Someone had great financial cadence, but they were doing customer service, whatnot. So I started moving people around. And once I started doing that, and I gave accountability and I gave some leadership roles to some of my team members, everything changed, right? I could go away and go to Vancouver or go to the US or go to Europe for meetings, and the business would continue to run without me having to be there, right? Because I had trusted in the team that I put in place. And then learning that structure and putting that in place, I documented everything. We put all those places, and we started identifying issues within the business. So we started meeting as a team on a weekly basis. And we started addressing those. And as soon as we started doing that, that all disappeared. And the unique thing is when I started on the fractional side, and when I introduced Fulcrum, I got introduced to EOS and through the implementers. And I started looking at what they were doing and everything else. And I compared it to what I had done already on the corporate side. And I thought, this is amazing. It would have saved me a lot of time building something from scratch if I had known about this and implemented it at the time, right? Yeah. So in EOS for a business, is a game changer, right?
Yeah.
It's what actually helps build the structure for the business, and it translates the business and creates that enterprise value that everyone's looking for, right? It helps. There's 6 components, right? You have a shared vision. You've got the right people in the right seats. You're looking at the data. You're resolving issues. You have documented processes. You've got traction through what we call rocks or goals,
Right.
and you're creating that meeting rhythm, right? And then
Yeah.
what it also does too is it allows communication. It improves communication between senior leadership and the staff, and it goes back and forth, which is quite unique. And if someone manages it and continues to work on it, it's amazing what it'll do for a business, because everything else is like the foundation of a building. All the other processes for all the other components of the business fall on top of that. And then EOS actually migrates not only from the senior leadership, but it migrates into operations, it migrates into finance, it migrates into sales, and even to the service department if you've got that. And then everyone's talking the same language, which means everyone's kind of rowing in the same directions, right? And it turns the business into a well-disciplined organization.
Yeah.
And
Well,
for me,
I'm a big proponent of it, and I think what I've seen is that businesses grow. When you have like a business, say like 10 employees or so, a lot of times the founder can wear multiple hats and get away with kind of growing the business that way. But I think there's a point where I don't know if it's where you hit like 20 employees or 25 employees, but you start to hit a wall where I think it's not easy to do the communication, top down communication, and then also the communication from the front lines back up to management. And I think that's where what EOS really kind of addresses is putting that infrastructure in place so that once you get to a certain size, the organization can keep functioning properly.
yeah, and if you can take some of the components of it, even if you're a smaller size, right? We build this a business infrastructure that's light. It's very similar to EOS, but it's made for businesses that are $3 to $4 million, and we bring in an integrator to do that, right? That helps businesses start thinking in that way, and putting the processes in that way. Because if you start building something with the right intent and the right processes right off the start, it becomes a lot easier to keep moving forward, as opposed to say you got to 10 million or 15 million. You've learned all these bad habits. Now you got to go back and clean everything up and start fresh, and then train everyone, right? You get a little bit of resistance, where if you start smaller, that resistance kind of disappears.
Roy, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. We'll have to bring you back in a future episode to talk a little bit more. But everybody out there, thank you very much for joining us, our audience. If you want to find out more information, we've got some information in the notes on how you can contact Roy and the Fulcrum Group. So everybody, thank you very much, and hope you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks very much.
That concludes this episode of the Expert Series from Selling Your Canadian Business. This conversation is for educational purposes only and is not professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals. Click on any of the additional resources on screen or visit sellingyourcanadianbusiness.ca. Thank you for joining us.